Okay, we're on. We're up and working, we're all on, so we'll start the meeting today, Cabinet meeting, Gedling Borough Council at Arnold Civic Centre. I'll move the apologies for absence. I think we've just got Henry, is it?
Yeah, just Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, Henry, who's fallen foul after all these months of dodging COVID at school, is now laid down with that. So he's got that. And now item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of July 2022. They're on pages 5 to 8. I'll move those. Second it. Agreed. And just before I move on to the next item, I've got to remember I've got a new face in front of me. Catherine, welcome to the Cabinet, or welcome back to the Cabinet in your new role. And now moving on to item 3, which is declarations of interests. Non-declared, so thank you. So right, forward plan is item 4. That's report to the Democratic Services Manager on page 9 to 17. Okay, Emma?
Nothing to add, so just any comments.
Okay, any comments? No comments received, so we're asked to note that. So are we agreed? Agreed. We are agreed, thank you. Moving on to item 5, which is the Gedling Quarter Plan and Senior Leadership Team report here. We're asked to progress against improvement actions, performance indicators in 2023, and for the Gedling plan for the end of 22-23, quarter 1 should be noted. Now, any comments on that?
Introduce that, Leader.
Yeah, you can.
Can I?
Over to you, Mark. I'll switch off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leader. So this report sets out the performance data for the Council at the end of quarter 1, which takes us up to the end of June 2022. Starting with the actions, there are 90 actions currently active in the multi-year Gedling plan, which ends on 31st of March 2023. At the end of quarter 1, we have completed 2 actions, as you'd expect at the start of the year, with the remaining 88 either in progress or assigned to an officer. At this stage, no problems with delivery are anticipated. In terms of the performance indicators, there are 32 indicators. 18 were on target, 4 were slightly below target, and 4 have unfortunately missed the target. The other 6 indicators were for tracking purposes only. In the report, at paragraph 2.4, there's a table which shows particular examples of positive performance, and I specifically want to just draw your attention to 2 of those, if I may. So the first one is the number of long-term empty homes returned to use, where we have achieved a figure of 39 against a target of 10, so an incredible performance there. And the second one is the number of rented households with health and safety hazards that have been remediated following council intervention. Again, linked to the selective licensing process, and again, the large figures where we've received and achieved a figure of 32 against a small target of 5. So again, incredible results there. Members will also remember that the number of net additional homes provided has actually fell short of the target in the previous year, might even be the previous couple of years, and it's really pleasing to see, therefore, that this year this has now turned around and it is actually exceeding the target for this year so far, so really good news on that one. The reason for the 4 indicators that have missed the target are set out in paragraph 2.5. In terms of processing housing benefit change of circumstances, we did see a huge number of referrals from the DWP in the first quarter. That hopefully won't be repeated in quarter 2, and we fully expect that to be back on performing and meeting its target in the second quarter. In terms of temporary accommodation, the Council is now close to completing its purchase of its 7th property, so we did intend to purchase 8. We're now almost signed on the dotted line for the 7th, which is really good, and we're also in the process of leasing 4 others. So all those together should really help us with this target. However, we are still struggling to find suitable accommodation for the larger families, which of course is reflected in those figures. Turning to the working days lost to sickness, this still remains quite high, but a lot of this is attributed to COVID, which hopefully now is on a decline, so we should see improvements in that. And the last one, recycling of household waste, is an issue, and the Council continues to focus its attention on resolving this matter. In terms of achievements this quarter, these are set out in detail in the appendix, with some separately highlighted comments in paragraph 2.7. In particular, the Homes for Ukraine scheme, where we've inspected homes for suitability, and we have worked with partners to resettle refugees and to welcome them into the borough. The Gedling Plan consultation was launched, which will help to prepare the council's priorities for the next 4-year period. The distribution of the £150 energy support payments fell on the local council, and we've done an incredible job on that, and we've paid almost £6 million in total to all our local residents. The continuation of the AMP building in the Market Square in Arnold, the construction is complete, and we're waiting and expecting the handover of this property on the 22nd of August, so not long now. And finally, some CAB outreach work at local GP surgeries and community hubs, which is absolutely essential to provide welfare advice to those in need. So I think they're all good examples of what we've achieved this quarter. And once again, Leader, can I place on record my thanks to all the staff involved in delivering and achieving all these targets. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Jenny?
Yes, thank you, Leader. The Chief Exec actually picked up on a couple of the things I wanted to mention, and I'd certainly like to commend the Empty Homes team, who have consistently outperformed over target, and it's an amazing result, 39 against a target of 10. I'd also like to mention, I'm hoping it's on here, the Pathfinder event, the Pathfinder code, design codes, is it on here, or have I put it on I can't find the page now. But just to mention that, I found it on the vibrant economy. Gedling was successful in getting £160,000 towards design coding process, and it's one of very few boroughs, so I think that's a tremendous achievement for our staff, and it's a really exciting project, and it's actually out for consultation at the moment, and you can find it on the website, and it's actually a really interesting consultation, and it's had quite a nice response from members of the public, so have a look at that and contribute if you feel you want to. In terms of the temporary accommodation, again, in a very difficult market, I think staff have done really well to get those homes purchased, and hopefully we can get people moved on. And obviously we've got new homes coming, affordable housing coming, hopefully on stream fairly quickly, which will also help ease the situation for those who find themselves in temporary accommodation. So thank you, Leader.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to echo the Chief Exec's comments about the particular two areas that stood out for me. The Homes for Ukraine work and the energy support payments. I mean, we've got a Gedling plan, and they don't feature in the Gedling plan because they're totally unexpected. They come out of left field, and the council responded. And I think what the Chief Executive said, that the officers have done really well to respond both to the additional call on them to inspect homes for Ukraine and to turn the system round, so instead of collecting money, we're paying it back to people.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I think I've often said that the minister, prime minister, whoever can stand there dishing out the orders, but it's this end. Then we say to the SLT team, can you deal with that? Then that gets handed down, and everybody else winces in every department and thinks, how the hell do we do that? And you've got evidence here that's showing that the work that's gone into it, and I know working closely with Fiona downstairs, where she's putting the spreadsheets down together of how we deal with the people from Ukraine, and we haven't got masses like they've got in, say, down the road at Derby, where they've got about 800. I think we've got about 60 or 70 people to deal with at the moment, but those homes need inspecting, and due diligence needs to be made, and I think they're doing an absolute excellent job. Just before I bring you in, where is it? The empty homes. I think that's just gone. If you and Jenny and I all remember from years ago that if you got one a year, and we've come from that now to 39 with a target of 10. But the one was often you can never do it. But that has actually put homes and roofs over people's heads, which is excellent. I think where was it? Your other one that you highlighted, Mike, was the health and safety hazards, and for all the belly aching that people have done out there about us bringing in licensing, and David's been overseeing it for homes, I think that's been worked out extremely well. And we don't know, we may well have invisibly saved some people's lives through the work that's been carried out through that. So I'll stand that, any time. And I think there was another item there that was about the amount of people, the homes we've built, which is good. It's a brave decision because we were, if you remember, making probably about 250,000, I think it was around about that money being spent on housing people in hotels. And I just wish for the people who are, anybody that's listening to this, our opposition, which is a Conservative Party, have continually today, are still putting social media out saying that we don't know how to handle things, we can't handle the budget, this, that and the other. We've done something here to try and correct that budget, and they have to remember at the end of the day, any money that's been expended has been expended and is still a capital asset. So it's still it helps us in two ways, but this continual misfeed of wrong information is completely out of order. We are doing a good job and the staff are doing a good job to deliver homes for people and try not to let people live in hotels, but as Mike said, it's very difficult. Viv.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mike, for your report. It's always good to look at the highlights in terms of what's gone well, and I know that you're all working extremely hard. And it's still a really difficult time. It's a difficult economy. It's a difficult time for people. What I was particularly struck with, and obviously from my portfolio's point of view in terms of thinking about young people, and it'd be interesting to know if there is any breakdown of that. But I thought it was, brilliant that our leisure centres are used so well. 60,000 people over what our target was have used our facilities, and it just goes to show how they really are appreciated in our community. It's great because we know that using leisure centres is about the health and well-being. It's about trying to make our communities healthier and well. It's about for young people getting them moving and doing activities, constructive activities. I know that there was some reduction in antisocial behaviour. I think that there was also reported. So again, getting young people into meaningful activities. It'd be interesting to know with the rise in the leisure centre activity, what groups of people are more using the facilities, so is there a particular group of people or is it across the board? But I thought that was really encouraging. Thank you very much and thanks for all the hard work. It's a really good report. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine.
Thank you, Leader. Just to draw out the work that I did with Viv regarding the youth mayor, just to draw out and recognise the Lord's Lieutenant's Award that our young people achieved. And it's been great to work along with the previous mayor and the new mayor as well. And they're definitely people to watch in the future. And it's great to see their enthusiasm for our communities. The second point is I have spent time with Fiona downstairs, and the inspections reports that come back from our officers from the Food, Health and Housing team regarding the Homes for Ukraine, those inspection reports are coming in thick and fast, and there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes regarding that, and also about providing extra support to the refugees to help them to settle into our communities, to become part of our communities and to feel welcome. So just to thank that team for all the work that they're doing, and also Fiona for the work that she does. Sometimes people don't get recognised because they work behind the scenes, and I think it's important that things like this are drawn out. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Ron.
Thanks, Leader. And could I say thank you to Mike for the report, very thorough report, and to thank him for all the hard work they're doing over the past year. Also, just to highlight some of the stats that have been produced, the garden waste is really very, very positive, and the number of new trade waste customers that we've got. And also say a big thank you to the guys that have worked over a very difficult time during this hot period. I know they've been leaving the depot a lot earlier than they would normally do, just to get on top of the work. So there's a lot of hard work going on down there, and just say thank you to Mike and his team for all the hard work they've done this year. Much appreciated. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments? Michael?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything that colleagues in Cabinet have said, but I just wanted to draw particular attention to the success of the Safer Streets funding bid that was jointly submitted by Gedling Borough Council and the South Nottinghamshire Community Safety Partnership, which obviously attracted in £750,000 from the Safer Streets funding for Netherfield and Colwick. And I think the people who actually did the graft on that bid, the hard work, our officers at the council and our good colleagues in the South Nottinghamshire Community Safety Partnership, I know in his portfolio, Councillor Ellis works closely with, should be commended. And I know that that funding is going to be used in your patch, Leader, for new CCTV, new street lighting, work with our young people to educate them around youth offending, but also additional neighbourhood warden patrols. I just, in terms of my own portfolio, I want to pay credit to the team in revenues and benefits and financial services in terms of getting nigh on £6 million out the door in terms of the energy rebate by the 30th of June 2022. And I know additional monies have trickled out since then where there have been slightly more complex cases, to be massively commended. It's one thing standing on a platform in Westminster and making an announcement about an energy rebate and getting billions out the door. It's quite another thing actually delivering that and setting up new software. And I know we had some criticism from certain quarters about how quick it went out the door, but we were one of the quickest councils. I know there might be one or two residents still around the borough who might have issues in terms of receiving some of the money. Bear with us. The scheme was quite a complicated scheme, and if you are one of those residents and you're concerned, then please do get in touch. But over and above the energy rebate, which obviously was a national scheme, I'm proud, Leader, that this council went further. And that we got an extra £60,000 out the door to help some of the poorest people in the borough whilst we're facing a cost of living crisis, with some of them having a further £30 cleared off any existing council tax that they owed to the council. People might say, well, 30 quid isn't a lot, but actually it's nigh on for a small car the price of half a petrol tank or a petrol tank for a really small car. And actually at the moment, every penny counts in terms of the cost of living crisis. So really pleased with that. And Councillor Wheeler, I'm sure if he was here, would raise this, so I will do on his behalf, particularly given we've just had some extreme heat and issues with people getting into trouble in open water and drowning. 3,600 kids in the first quarter and adults learning to swim, 1,000 more in the first quarter than we were pre-COVID. And that shows that, as Councillor McCrossan said, people are coming back to our leisure centres. It shows, I think, that we are vindicated in putting in the levelling up bid that we've put in for brand new leisure facilities and cultural facilities in Arnold. But we're not just focused on Arnold, as the Safer Streets funding shows. Best part, £750,000 going to Netherfield and Colwick, and as Councillor Hollingsworth knows, we're pitching in for £2.3 million to spend on our other high streets and town centres around the borough as well in terms of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So all in all, I think this shows that difficult period, tough cost of living crisis for our businesses and residents, but a council that is still ambitious for its residents and for its businesses is working flat out. And I think all colleagues on behalf of the council through you as the Chief Exec, Mike, should be commended for the absolutely brilliant work that's going on.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further comments? None raised. On page 19 is we're asked to note the progress against the improvement actions. So I'll move that. Seconded. We agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, which is on page 37, Prudential Code Monitoring 22-23 and Quarterly Treasury Activity Report for quarter ended 30th of June 2022. Head of Finance. Yes. Paul's going to do it.
Great. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you.
Yeah, members will be familiar with kind of the format of these reports, especially as the annual Treasury Activity Report was presented at the last Cabinet meeting on 6th of July. So just very, very quickly, for members' benefit, I'll highlight some points to note in quarter one. Clearly, as members will be aware, it's already been alluded to, the cost of living pressures affect economies throughout the whole world. Consumer Price Index, CPI, that reached 9.4% in June. Interest rates have been rising in response to this. There were 5 successive rate increases to 1.25%, and members may have picked up earlier today a further 0.5% rise in interest rates, agreed today by the Monetary Policy Committee, taking them up to 1.75%. That puts interest rates now at the highest level since 2009. So it's been a real rapid acceleration in recent months. One positive for the Council in terms of the rising interest rate is it's the interest that we earn on our investments that we has kind of benefited. We've exceeded expectations from when we set the budget back over in the winter months. We achieved investment income of almost £60,000 in the first quarter of the year. Perhaps unanticipated, but it's a kind of reflection really of kind of the way that the world, the dynamics, things are changing so quickly. Again, The Council's £1 million investment in the Local Authority Property Fund continues to exceed expectations. We're now positive now. In the early kind of years, that £1 million, the value of it dipped down because it normally does because these are long-term investments. We're now achieving £1 million plus, which is kind of real positive as well. So both capital growth and we're earning dividends on that investment as well. Most of our other investments are in money market funds. They're AAA rated, highly liquid, diversified funds as well, so very secure for the point of view of the Council. We did no new borrowing in Q1, and we had no cash flow difficulties either. Appendix 1 shows investment and borrowing activity done in the period between 1st of April and 30th of June, whilst Appendix 2 shows the position as at 30th of June on our prudential and treasury management indicators, compared with the original estimates approved by Council back on 3rd of March. Finally, I can confirm that Alison, as the 151 officer, we've complied with the requirements of the Treasury Management Code and the Prudential Code in full. That's all I've got to say about the report itself, but I'll be happy to take any questions that Cabinet members may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Have we got any questions? Finance? Michael?
Yeah, we're not. That draws attention to the economic update showing a 0.1% fall in GDP for the overall economy month by month in March, and then a further 0.3% fall in April, with suspicion that either further contraction or stagnation is going to take place in May and June. And the report draws to attention what we've heard this week, I think, for the two contenders to be British Prime Minister, which is they both think that on their own watch the country is heading towards a recession. That's what this indicates as well. And I'm seriously concerned about that, because Cabinet members sat around the table and elected members here in the Council will know that our inboxes at the moment are full of people who are struggling to buy school uniforms, struggling to fill their tank in the car, struggling to pay for their heating bills, struggling to buy the weekly shop. And it really, really worries me that at the moment what we're not hearing from the national government is any plan for growth, because if we don't have a plan for growth nationally, public services are going to feel the strain, businesses are going to feel the strain, and residents are going to feel the strain as well. And as I say, that's not just been borne out in terms of the two contenders, who I think have said quite clearly, or certainly Liz Truss has said that she thinks that Richie Sunak's plan is going to lead us towards a recession. That's clearly being borne out here in the report, in the facts and figures, and I find that really, really concerning, that we're back in that position, and that after 12 years of promises, we're no further forward really in terms of the economic position, and where is that going to leave the hard-working residents in Gedling?
Thank you. Anybody else? Further questions? Be nice to see if, when interest rates go up, Paul, do we get it all passed on? Because I'm looking at my little wad in the bank there thinking, hang on a minute, you're not passing this on. So we suffer the same outcome, do we? Which is, there's not only that, there's also the fact is there's a significant rise being indicated by the government that we've got to give our employees, and right the way across the country, local authorities, and there's no money coming. As Michael's pointed out, we're heading in the wrong direction, but it's particularly about that interest rate.
Yeah, indeed, picking up what the leader says there, normally what happens when the base rates kind of rise, the rates we get on our investments, what's being offered by money market funds, just should generally start to rise to follow that. It can often be like a time and delay as well. But it should kind of start to mirror that, and we should be in a better position. We're starting to see this year, based on the interest rates increases in recent months, starting to get more interest on our investments, most certainly coming through here as a council. So that's been one kind of positive for us as an organisation of the events of recent months.
So in the other quarters, we could expect that, the trajectory to rise. No, it's interesting because lots we're elected members that are here. We're getting bombarded now. How do we deal with this? And then you see the next headlines. Was it the head of gas? Was it 11 million who paid one person? And it's really awfully political, but it has to be because it just ain't fair. There are people out there really struggling now. And it's, they'll blame us for all sorts of things. And some of the emails, you think it's my fault. But, we've got to keep pressing where and when we can through SITFA and other places. Keep it highlighted. Then, as Michael said, there are two people boxing at the moment for the leadership. The sooner that's over, the sooner we're better. And somebody sits down and uses a calculator properly so we can see which direction we're going. Thank you. It'd be best to move. I think we're asked to note that report on page 37. We are. So move that. Seconded. Agreed? You are agreed, thank you. Item 7, which is the quarterly budget. back to you.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, starting with the general fund revenue budget. Yeah, as set out in the report, we're projecting currently at the end of Q1 an underspend of 46,500 for 22-23, and are proposing to put this into the inflationary pressures contingency reserve to address the issues of rising inflation, as we've just been talking about. This position is mainly a consequence of increased income from swimming lessons, as was mentioned earlier, and as well increased interest on investments. Plus as well, we've had a significant reimbursement of business rates income as well. These have been offset partly by, as you could imagine, increased fuel costs that reflect the cost of living pressures. Indeed, this is probably the biggest area of concern that we've got, the whole cost of living. We have to carefully monitor that, give that real close scrutiny. What we're planning to do is to bring an update of a mid-year review of the medium-term financial plan back to Cabinet to kind of give our latest kind of forecasts and projections for members' attention. Again, one significant pressure has just been alluded to as well that we will have to face this year will be the April 2022 pay award. Our budget was based on a 3% pay award, which worked out a total figure of about £420,000. The employers have made an offer of £1,925, a flat rate increase, which would kind of equate to about, in overall terms, about 7% in total, which is more than double what we've allowed for in our budget. Again, as you can imagine, a flat rate increase, it means for someone on Band 2, the increase would be just over 10%, for Band 8, about 5.9%, and so on that kind of downward. As the pay bands go up, the employees' increase would kind of go down. So, again, that makes kind of pressure for us as a council, should that be approved. And, but what we have done is when we did the final accounts, we put 250,000 into the inflationary pressures contingency reserve, which would help to alleviate that, plus as well the 46,000 that we're proposing to put into that reserve as a consequence of the Q1 monitoring that we're reporting here today. Again, going forwards, given the scale of what that pay award would mean, to absorb it this year as well, we would need other underspends to help kind of absorb a pay award of that nature. Also as well, another pressure we will have is clearly, again, we've just been alluding to, utility prices. They're just going in one direction, really. I think we're in a bit of a kind of, at the moment, in the summer months, I won't mean until we head into the autumn, the winter months, the proper true effect of that really kind of comes to the fore. We have a bit of protection in terms of some of our existing contracts that kind of gives us a bit of protection, but of course, when they mature, new contracts come in, you probably see a big kind of spike in cost there. So again, that is another area that we have to closely monitor as we go through the future months. Again, as has been pointed out earlier, we've made reference to in the report, some of the measures that this council has done to try and support our residents through these difficult times. The report makes reference, as did Deputy Leader a few minutes ago, to the £60,000 hardship relief for council taxpayers, the discretionary funding that we've allocated in respect to the energy support grants, and also as well, a lot of our staff have been doing, particularly in customer services, supporting the county council with a household support fund. Again, we do a lot of signposting there. We're very often the first point of contact for members of the public in terms of engaging with the public sector. We're that kind of front end of the process, really, and so a lot of the staff down there have been doing good work in that area. We made reference in the report as well to the efficiency programme for 22-23. One of the proposed efficiencies we don't anticipate will be met, but this has been offset by a better performance on one of next year's planned efficiencies, which will help to offset that. Moving on to the capital programme, when we include the carry forwards from 21-22, we have a capital programme now, 22-23, £10.67 million. Expenditure of £823,000 was incurred in Q1, and we're proposing in this report this afternoon to add 3 new schemes into the capital programme. First one would see a play area refurbishment at Lamley Lane. We would look to finance that predominantly through borrowing. It could be through a bid to an external body, maybe through the Shared Prosperity Fund. We won't proceed with that scheme until the external funding source gets confirmed, but we're looking for a member's approval today to formally put that into the programme. The second of the 3 schemes is an extension to the car park at Bestwood Country Park. We've received Section 106 funding towards that, £36,000, and we'd like to utilise it for that purpose. And finally, as well, some additional costs in respect of the Arnold Market. We've had to extend some of the project management there, and we'd look to fund that through money from the Economic Development Reserve. There are 3 appendices to the report. The first one is a summary of the General Fund revenue budget, plus details of the significant variances across all portfolio holder areas. And the second one is the use of reserves in Q1. And the final appendix shows how we arrive at the capital programme for 22-23 of £10.67 million and how we intend to finance it. You'll see there that borrowing accounts for just under half of the intent of the planned programme for the current year. That's all I've got to say about the report itself. I would be happy to answer any questions that members may have. Thanks, you.
Paul. Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Leader, and thanks, Paul, for a comprehensive report. And given the sort of headwinds that there are in the financial situation at the moment and the economic situation, I think to be £46,000 underspend, although it be only Q1 at the moment on net budget of what, 12 million is not a bad place to be, albeit in Q1. I just wanted to draw attention to, which is referenced on page 55, albeit I'm sure you and Alison are not overly enamoured about a loss in £37,000 income in terms of reduced DNA membership. I see that as a massive plus, people transferring from the DNA membership to our Free Armed Forces card, something I was incredibly proud that we included in our manifesto, and it's another promise delivered by this administration, and Councillor Wheeler should take huge amount of credit for steering through that promise, and it comes on the back of or alongside the council just recently being awarded the Gold Armed Forces Covenant Award, which is absolutely outstanding. And Councillor Collis, who's led on that work, I know supported by the Leader and others and officers who have done an outstanding piece of work there, should be commended, and shows just how important looking after those who have served our country previously and those who currently serve is. The only other thing I wanted to do, Leader, is just commend Councillor Arlingsworth and Councillor Pearson in the way they've been tenaciously pushing for improvements in the whole area around Gedling Village. Particularly, I know recently they've had success in some new footpath works, but also some investment in the changing facilities at Lamley Lane. But to finally see them securing an element of funding by whatever route we choose to use, as Paul said, for potentially a new play area refurbishment at Lamley Lane is fantastic. And Jenny and Linda should both be commended for that work. Really pleased to see that alongside some other areas of investment in the report, and commend the report.
Thanks, Michael. Anybody else? Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Paul. So on page 53, we're asked to approve the general budget, note the use of reserves, and approve the changes to capital programme. I'll move that. Seconded, we are agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, Director of Corporate Resources and the S151 officer. Alice.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This report presents the annual report on information governance from myself as the Council's designated Senior Information Risk Owner, covering the year 21-22. Just by way of background, the CIRO report provides a summary of the information governance activity across the Council to provide assurance that information risks are being effectively managed. The key priorities of information governance are to focus on the risks to confidentiality, and to integrity and the availability of information assets, and for us to manage them in a balanced way to ensure we fulfil our statutory obligations, but also to ensure that we support service delivery really well with the information that we have. So this, the CIRO report covers both paper and electronic information, and key components of our assurance is to ensure the security of both of those through IT system security and the effective data protection processes. You will see in the report that COVID pressures have continued to impact on the capacity to deliver some of the planned actions in 21-22, with a delay in the full review of the information security policy, which will now come into Cabinet later on this year. That said, we've not been complacent, and there has been quite a lot of activity and evidence to provide assurance that information security and governance remains effective. So just for example, in terms of our data protection responsibilities, online refresher training was available for staff, with the majority of staff completing that during last year, although it's probably fair to say there are a few stragglers that we need to catch up with. And a similar training is planned to be made available for members during this financial year. In terms of responses to external requests for information, that was completed effectively throughout last year, with a similar number of requests being received compared to the previous year. and there were no complaints to the Information Commissioner regarding those responses. The number of information data breaches reported at 44 was the same as the previous year, and being mainly minor in nature, with no systemic issues being identified for those occurring. We did have 2 breaches which resulted in risk to the rights and freedoms of the individuals, which were reported to the Information Commissioner, but these were both closed with no further action. I can confirm that officers are still engaging well with the process, which is effectively supported through the refresher training that we roll out. In terms of cybersecurity, cyber training materials were made available for new starters and as refresher training for existing staff during last year, and have been further supplemented during this year already by the rollout of an online course from the National Cybersecurity Centre, with training also to be available for members this year. There were no cybersecurity incidents involving malware or hacking last year. The number of phishing attempts continues to increase, and has been particularly high since COVID, which is a national trend, but all were prevented through a combination of technical controls and staff vigilance. Clearly, it's not an area where we can rest upon our laurels, and risks can never be fully eliminated. But continuous improvements to our cybersecurity mitigation measures, that's key for us, with actions being undertaken all throughout the last year. Some specific ones to mention were that we've improved software patching, we've had implementation of next generation firewalls, and upgrades to anti-ransomware, and also a system to enable continuous vulnerability scanning. A cyber risk internal audit and conclusion of a related cyber risk register, they're both due to be completed during this financial year. An IT disaster recovery rehearsal and a cyber-related emergency planning exercise are also planned to be completed this financial year, and also business continuity plans across the organisation will be reviewed to ensure that they're fit for purpose in the event of a cybersecurity incident. So just in conclusion, the review of the assurance framework confirms that it remains effective. There's huge credit here to both our data protection officers and to our IT team, and all officers generally for their continued vigilance and engagement with the processes. But as I say, continuous improvements and ongoing review to all of those processes is absolutely essential to ensure that our risks continue to be mitigated as far as they possibly can. So I'll leave it there, Leader. The recommendation is to note the report, and that's set out on page 77.
Thanks, Alison, and that's a quick brush through, which is hours, weeks, years of work in some cases. And Michael and I were just conferring, the FOI, is there any way that we could sort some of this FOI out? I mean, if when you go to, your computer puts up here, says, do not print this unless it's necessary. Is there any way we can get this through? Because a lot of this information is available. And Sarah and the rest of the crew down in legal must be driven potty with some of this stuff, where there's hundreds and hundreds of people wasting the time. And the other people out there, the other 120,000 or whatever it is that live in Gedling, are paying for it. I don't know. Michael at the LGA, myself at different things nationally, lobbied MPs and all sorts, we do want the freedom of information because that is quite correct if somebody asks it, but it is now being abused, and I've really called Mike as the Chief Executive and Alison 151. We get some costing around this to exactly what it's costing. I only recently, and it's only because I won't go too far into it, but dealing with parish councils, I thought had got their own autonomy, seems to be that we are swamped with different cases, in fact spats in the playground I think in some cases, that our legal people are taken away from doing their proper job. So I asked that as a request, but it'll probably fall, not with you, it won't fall on stony ground. It falls, and we could ask the two boxers, couldn't we, who are vying for their position. Try and sort this out, because the national waste of money on these FOIs is absolutely ridiculous. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And just to go one step further, if you like, the principle of freedom of information is important, isn't it? We should be transparent. People should have a right to access information of a body that is using public funding. But the flip side of the coin is the taxpayer has a right to know how much this is costing them. And the taxpayer has a right to know if they're repeat offenders, because by the same token, those people have a right to information. The taxpayer also has a right to know if that is being abused. And so I would like to know, I would like a further report to a future cabinet, what is the total cost? What's the full cost to the taxpayer of processing 583 FOI requests? Are there repeat offenders? Is information being requested that is already publicly available, on the website? I just think we need a really clear-sighted view about this, because there's a risk, as John says, that if this spirals out of control, not just for Gedling, but other public sector bodies, the principle of FOI could end up getting ditched in future by any particular government because of the cost to the taxpayer, which would be a real retrograde step, because at times the introduction of FOI has given rise to things being found out that perhaps previously wouldn't have been found out where there was wrongdoing or whatever else. But I just think we need a bit of FOIs about transparency. So let's just have a bit of transparency here, because, as John says, there are 120,000 taxpayers here who are funding this, whilst meanwhile the officers who are dealing with this could be doing their important day job, which is providing valuable public services for the people and businesses of Gedling. So some more information on this, I think, would be really helpful.
I'll say certainly we can pull that back together. I think where information is available on our websites, we will point people to access information in that way. So it's where it's not immediately available. So to reduce the burden on us, then clearly we do that. But I think it probably is fair to say that does feel like there's an increase in burden on our resources to respond to FOI requests. So yes, we'll bring a report back.
And if you put the cost to that is significant, times by how many councils, times by government departments, times by authorities, police, fire, ambulance. Can you imagine the health service, how much they're paying out with people? But anyway, we'll move back to page 77, which is the recommendation and report be noted. Seconded? Yeah. Agreed. Thank you. Moving finally on, this is another part of moving forward with the bid that's been announced this week that we're after the money. This is to assist with it, putting some facts to over strategic review of community facilities. So I'll move the cabinet recommendations, and I'll ask Mike just to speak to it just for a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Leader. This report seeks cabinet approval for the proposed strategic review of leisure and community facilities, and to approve the establishment of a budget of £90,000 to pay for those reviews. The approach proposed within the report follows the guidance as set out by Sport England. It consists of an overarching strategic outcomes planning model developed from the work undertaken in other strategies. These other strategies are the facilities playing model. This has already been commissioned by this authority and progressing well. The built facilities strategy, the playing pitch strategy, again, the budget has already separately been approved for that, and it can be commissioned straight away. So overall, the strategic outcomes planning model will also include a leisure services delivery guidance review as well, which will help us, sort out our way forward in this regard. So the aim is to complete all of this work on the strategies towards the end of 2022 or early 2023, Leader. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, thank you very much. And so I'll move the recommendations. I need a seconder. Seconded. And to thank everybody that's concerned that's put this review together. I say it does mean that we mean business, backing up, and hopefully that somebody's listening in the big house, if there's anybody in there at the moment, and they'll send some money this way. But anyway, I've moved those. It's been seconded. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
We're agreed. Thank you. And I think that completes it. Somewhere. Yeah, there's no items that are urgent. Only I'm being told it's going to be 28 degrees, is it, next week? Who was telling me? Somebody was telling me. You were telling me it's 28 degrees next week, so enjoy. Thank you. Yeah.